Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead Q&A video. So this is obviously, I do my weekly Q&As every single Wednesday. This one here is going to focus on some reactions to episode 17 and 18, but also some questions and predictions that you guys have going into episode 19 here. So if you want to take part in these Q&As, definitely go follow the Discord. The server name is Appetite for the Dead. The link for it is in the description of this video. Just make sure if you do join that you do select the Q&A role, because if you select the Q&A role, then you will be notified whenever I'm asking for questions for the Q&A, because there's a channel there for Q&A. And yeah, just whenever I ask for questions, you guys can post all of them there. But anyways, let's get into the first question. Actually, before we do that, I guess I should warn you for spoilers for episode 17 and 18. And then the usual, obviously make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. First question here, how do you think they will handle the lack of variant walkers throughout seasons 2 to 11? Well, I think it's pretty simple. I mean, they've basically handled it. Like, the way they're sort of explaining it is, walkers are just sort of, in certain regions, they will be different, right? Like, it's not always the same walker. Obviously, the real explanation here is that those were walkers in season 1. They didn't really know how to handle walkers, that they just sort of did what they did with those versions of them, right? It was just more of, well, this is just what a zombie can do. And then in season 2 and 3, they sort of more fell into, well, no, this is more of what walkers can do. They just more typically behave in this way. And maybe it was because of more of a story thing, right? Going into season 2 and 3, you didn't want to have walkers constantly climbing walls, turning doorknobs and stuff like that, because it would put our characters from season 2 and on always constantly dealing with insane threats, right? And I think that's just really what it was. Like, I think it was just, they didn't really know what a zombie should be like, and then they just sort of figured it out after season 2 and 3, right? But I think the way they're explaining it now, and this is why I do really like this explanation, is certain walkers in certain regions basically behave that way. So this way, it really does sort of explain why the season 1 walkers were that way, right? It was just that variant of walker. And then as soon as they sort of left the area, they were just different variants of walkers. And then even now, they went so far up north, they haven't dealt with these walkers in a while, but now they are. And obviously we learned that in France that there is another variant of walker there as well. So this is more of a new thing that they're doing with the story, but I definitely support it because it just makes the whole thing more fresh and more exciting. Q&A, how big of a role do you think variant walkers will have through the final 8? And how many people do you think will die in 19? Well, I just did a video on this, and if you've watched it, you probably know my thoughts already, but I think that is sort of my concern here, is I hope the variant walkers play a role more than just this episode, and that they're sort of around for the remainder of the series here. If they're not, I definitely will be concerned, and I think a lot of fans will complain about that, and we're just gonna have to wait and see on that. In terms of how many people I think will die, one person's dying for sure. I'm still predicting Elijah, but I think there's a good possibility that Lydia could die as well. I think I could easily see both of them dying. I think it would be crazy, but I wouldn't be that surprised if both of those characters died. Q&A, do you think the new variant walkers will be able to enter the big communities in the Walking universe, such as the Commonwealth and Portland, or even the main CRM city like Philadelphia, like climbing their walls and etc.? Well, yeah, I could see that happening for sure. In terms of the Civic Republic, probably not, because I think they have so much security there. Walkers are never getting anywhere close. So no, I don't really think that the walkers will be able to get through in that way. In terms of the Commonwealth, yeah, like that's sort of my whole concern here, right? Is how much of a role are they going to play in their overall story going into the last, I guess, however many episodes are remaining here? Because it better be a lot more than just episode 19. I'm telling you, like, I definitely would be disappointed if it was like all of a sudden walkers that we see later on are basically just the same walkers. Like, I think from a story point of view, that would just be kind of nuts. Like, it would just be crazy to have those walkers just return to normal, and just to have the fans be like, oh, I guess that was just one scary sort of night that happened there. Like, imagine if you're just a casual viewer, right? And you're just watching this show. Like, it's going to throw you off so much. So yeah, I do hope that they handle it a lot better, and that they do play a bigger role here in the last however many episodes that are left. Q&A, do you think Mercer knows about the CRM and his connection with the Commonwealth? I don't think that he knows at all. I think Mercer knows, like originally I might have thought that maybe he knew something. I don't think he knows at all. I think he tries to understand what he can. I think he knows that there's bad stuff happening, but I don't think he knows anything about the Civic Republic. I don't think he really knows what's going on with Tyler Davis either. Q&A, how do you picture Daryl finding out about Rick? I kind of picture someone telling him. I don't picture him finding out something, firsthand, seeing the Civic Republic, seeing this information of something. Like, I more picture Daryl finding out just from Carol or from Judith maybe, or just, or from Connie. Like, that's sort of how I'm predicting the whole thing here. Q&A, do you think Roman and Shira are spies for the Civic Republic military? I think it's the same situation like Huck being a Civic Republic military spy from World Beyond. Personally, I don't think so. I think Lance knows about what's going on, but no, I don't think so at all. I think they're just sort of Lance's people. But obviously there is connection from like between the two entities, right? Between the Commonwealth and the Civic Republic. Lance knows about a lot of that. I mean, Roman and Shira could know a lot more about that as well. But no, I don't think those two characters are spies for the CRM. Q&A, because we are getting variant walkers in episode 19, do you see one chasing one of our characters like Jerry or Aaron? Well, yeah, like if you're going to have those walkers in there, obviously they're coming after our characters, so you will technically see our characters running away. Q&A, in your video, you mentioned Daryl holding the gun in episode 19. Personally, I think that it looks like a scene after they're captured, because if you remember, Judith now has the gun. So I think episode 20 to 21. What do you think? It's possible, I guess. I'm just really under the impression that there's going to be this big showdown that happens here in episode 19. There's a shot in the trailer where you do see Daryl sort of pulling Eugene and saying, we have to go now, like we gotta go now. And so I think there's a lot of mayhem that happens there at the Commonwealth, and then I think they're gone afterwards. Like, there's so many shots of Daryl and Maggie and Carol and a lot of characters just out in the woods, and we haven't seen those shots yet, really. And so I'm wondering if that's where it happens. I don't think, Daryl being in the Commonwealth and going into episode 20 and 21 really makes too much sense because of what Pamela Milton's going to do. Like, the characters are literally being arrested in episode 19. Like, Daryl would be arrested, right, and thrown in a cell. And we know there's so many shots of him out there, but there's not a lot of shots of Rosita and Ezekiel out there. So I think our characters are going to leave, maybe go back to Alexandria to try and take over that place there, and then eventually come back to the Commonwealth to save everyone. And so that's why we'll get a shot like this with Ezekiel. And I believe this is probably from the last episode or two. I'm thinking 22 or 23. And at this point, they've all broken out. And they're just, who knows what the story will be at that point, but they're sort of dealing with the Commonwealth. So I guess to answer your question, I more believe that Daryl holding the gun, like holding Rick's gun, I think that most likely happens in episode 19. Q&A, do you think Lance will get killed off this season at the end of the show so they can use him to sew up the CRM plot hole, or do you think they're going to save him for the next shows because he is such a good villain? Well, I'm not entirely sure what plot hole you're talking about in terms of, with Lance. I mean, I could definitely see them killing him off, but I don't know if there's a plot hole there with Lance. Q&A, since Sebastian died, who do you think is going to take his place in killing Rick in the comics? I believe they're going to make Herschel take his place and kill Negan in the future. Yeah, I guess if they ever wanted to do a scene like that, they could totally do something like that. I could definitely see something like that happening just way in the future, obviously in 4 or 5 years from now, whenever they plan to end this whole current version of the story. In terms of that moment happening on the show here, I don't think it's happening at all. I think it's so different. I think all of it is just totally different. Q&A, since last time you mentioned that characters often die when there is not much potential to be written for them anymore. Get a redemption arc and then just end up dying. All the main cast, including Ezekiel, Gabriel, Eugene, Aaron, and Rosita, have a chance of being killed off at the end of the show. So who are your predictions of one of those characters, I guess, being killed off? Well, if I had to guess out of those characters that you put there, Ezekiel, Gabriel, Eugene, Aaron, and Rosita, I still really think Rosita's going to die just because of that trailer shot. There was just so much stuff there in that trailer that it really seemed to imply that, I don't know how she makes it out of there. You have Gabriel reaching out of the window. Rosita's there trying to climb up. She has walkers on her. And I don't know how she makes it out of that. I really don't. I really feel like she's probably going to die. And then in terms of the other four, with Ezekiel, Gabriel, Eugene, and Aaron, if I had to pick one, I don't think Gabriel's dying because I think Rosita's going to die. Ezekiel, I could see dying, definitely, but it's really hard. I see Eugene surviving, and I'm just simply going based off of the comic. I don't think it makes too much sense to kill off Eugene. And so you're really just sort of, relying on Ezekiel, Gabriel, or Aaron, or at least I am. And so I think it actually comes down, because I do think Gabriel's going to survive, I think it comes down to Ezekiel and Aaron. And if I had to choose one there, oh man, I guess I would have to go with Aaron, but it's really hard. I don't necessarily know. It's kind of hard to predict. And I think if something happened, it would just be shocking and just sort of out of nowhere. So yeah, as of now, I don't really know. But if I had to pick out of those five, I think Rosita's probably the one that's gone. Do you think we will see the Perimeter group in the Rick and Michonne spinoff? I don't think so. I think any other, any sort of World Beyond connection likely won't be in that show. There might just be like a mention of something. Like, it's going to be so unrelated. I don't think any characters will likely be there. And then last question here. If we got another season of Tales of the Walking Dead, do you think we could get a backstory episode about Daryl? No, definitely not. If they're ever going to do a backstory episode on Daryl, it's going to be on the Daryl show. Like, there's no way in hell that they're going to be doing something otherwise. So no, I don't see that happening. But I also don't really see a Tales season 2 happening just because it hasn't been renewed yet. And usually, after a show ends like that, after these bigger, events happen with The Walking Dead, they would announce its renewal, and they haven't at all. There was a big teaser for Walking Dead Universe content coming in 2023, and it wasn't featured on there, so I think Tales of the Walking Dead is basically done, and I think it's probably for the best overall. So anyways, I'm gonna leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.